Summer is fast approaching, which means it's almost open house season. In the summer, we tend to see a lot more open houses because buyers are out, they're walking around, and they're looking at homes, maybe to buy now and maybe just to kind of plan for the future. But that being said, we want to make sure we do really well on open houses this summer. The reason why is they can be great. They can be a great way to grow your list, can meet new buyers, meet potential sellers, and sometimes that's the neighbors walking through. You can sell that home, you can get referrals, you can build your rapport if you're doing open houses for other agents, and you can establish yourself as an area expert, but only if you do them right. So this year we're going to focus on the process a little bit and talk about how you can incorporate the Focus First tools into your open houses to help you have success. So the main walk through the process, we're going to start with the before. Now, if it's your open house, you're going to advertise it and you're going to post it to your social media. If you're doing an open house for someone else, you're going to go ahead and still post it to social media. You might not spend money advertising it, but hopefully the listing agent did that already. Now, some people might not want you posting an open house on your social media because it's their listing and they don't want any confusion with that. So just make sure that's clear with the other agent. But in most cases, they don't really care that you're using it to drive traffic to their open house because they want to sell that house. So as a good kind of rule of thumb though, when you're doing an open house for another agent, make sure you have a good conversation with them and just really talk about it. When it comes to actually doing the open house, we're going to start with the setup. We're going to bring sign-in sheets or a showing log or something like that. We're going to bring some graphs. Now, if it's your listing, you'll know what graphs you want to bring. We want things that really paint the listing in a positive light. So that can be the area patterns of buying pattern or odds of selling or time to sell. It can be the FHFA graph. And in some cases, some people like bringing the pond or something like that that's very visual. If it's not your listing and you're doing an open house for a different agent, go ahead and just bring the FHFA graph as a kind of a baseline because we know that that's broad enough that it's not always restricted to that house. But we want to make sure that we're not, using a graph that the agent maybe didn't want buyers to see. And we had this talk actually in a previous video and just in agents all the time, and they ask, should I not show graphs that maybe don't paint the area in a positive light or something like that? And we always say we want to show everything. So we want to be a good, impartial expert on the area to your sellers. However, when we're talking to buyers, we're trying to entice offers, it's okay to just bring the positives. So in this case, if you're doing it for another agent, you might not know what graphs you want to show versus if it's your listing, you know what graphs you do. So you're going to bring those. You're going to bring a newsletter as well. Now, again, one of those cases where you want to talk to the other agent, but in most cases, they're okay with you bringing your newsletter. And the reason why is if someone walks through and maybe they're someone from the area or just someone kind of looking around and they don't know much and they're kind of starting this buying process, giving them an update on the market when they haven't really been clued into it is a great way to connect with them, give them good information, and again, establish yourself as an expert. So bring a newsletter, and hopefully from the seller's agent or from the listing agent, you'll have a key features list or something like that, or some sort of touring guide. If you don't, go ahead and get there a little early, walk around the house, find a couple of key features that as people walk in, you can really point out to them. So when they're walking through the house, these are key features that kind of stand out and are good kind of conversation pieces to help them focus on the things that they would love about this house. So now that we're all set up, we're ready to go ahead and start the open house. So now that we've started the open house, we're going to welcome people, ask them to sign in. We're going to tell them about the graph or graphs we do have, explain what they mean, and kind of just give them this kind of breakdown of the area to show the positive effects that have been happening. We're going to tell them about the key feature or key features we noticed to make sure that we say, hey, when you're walking around, make sure you notice this, this, and this. Then we're going to let them walk around for a little bit and promise to catch up later. Now, one part of this that kind of, some people like walking around, and it's a security thing because they just don't want things getting stolen or broken or anything like that. However, it can create a very uncomfortable position for the buyer if you're just kind of standing there looking over their shoulder the whole time. They can't have honest conversations with each other, and it just feels like you're expecting them to steal something. So it can kind of create a negative situation. Now, again, there's cases where it's a higher end home and the seller wants you to actually give private tours around, but not let them walk around by themselves. Totally different scenario. If the seller is asking for that, then go ahead and match that. But in most cases, let them walk around a little bit free, promise to catch up with them. And then when you have a downtime or maybe not as much traffic, or they've come back down to the area where you're at, whether it be the kitchen or the front room, then we're going to move on to the walkthrough section, which really we're just kind of walking up to them and just having a conversation. But we're going to build that conversation in a positive light. So first we're going to ask them, hey, did you see that feature I mentioned or features we mentioned? Like, what did you think about those? Great. What did you like best about this house and why? Like, how does that fit your needs? We're going to really focus on this positive side. Sometimes people kind of just start talking and they're like, well, what did you like? What did you hate? Like, okay, well, let's cut that section out and just forget about that for now, because we want to talk about what they liked the most about the house. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to force them to buy it. We're not trying to sell them on anything. We're not trying to coerce them. But with this, we're going to ask what they liked best and why they liked it. And then just simply move into, okay, so would this house fit your needs? And if it doesn't, what would you need to really, move? What's your kind of deciding point? This kind of open conversation, whether they're, buyers that are underrepresented and you can pick them up, there's someone that's interested in that house, they're potential sellers from around the neighborhood, or even if they are represented, you're still having a good conversation with them to help them really discern whether they like this house or not, and maybe be able to write a contract that day. Now, again, what we can do too with the conversation is tie back into the FHFA graph or the other graphs we brought as a good visual medium and a good reliance on data. Just like we talked about in real estate reviews, if we defer to the data, it's one of those things where we're just pointing out the obvious, right? This is just what science says. This is just what the numbers say. So if people say, yeah, I like this, but I'm nervous about the area. Well, let's look at the area here. I mean, we see in the FHA graph, we've been improving this much by, appreciation every year. We can kind of start working through some of those, but not like forcing it, just actually referring to data. So if you can here, try and refer back to the graphs to just anchor this discussion in data while we talk about the emotionality of what they love. That combination of anchored data and emotionality is a great way to really then move into the next step, which really is about how to say goodbye, where we're going to thank them for coming in. We're going to set up a follow-up promise of some kind, whether that be, hey, you asked about other homes maybe in this area that had, a 5-piece bath or, had a bathtub and, this house only had a shower. Whatever reason it might be, we're going to set up a follow-up to send them that, or we might just say, hey, thanks for coming in. I know that you're not looking for a house right now. Hey, I'm just going to send you a thank you card. I'd love to send you that. I'll send you that to everyone that comes in. So thanks for coming in. Something as simple as that can be a very easy way. Or if they're represented by an agent, you could then say, I'll let your agent know what you told me about what you love about this house and what you're thinking. And then you can contact that agent. Sometimes people would say, yeah, but that's use of your time. That's not going to get you any commission. But it still builds a positive rapport with your current house that you're doing for an agent, for example. Now, if it's your house, then obviously there's commission built into that. But again, it's always a positive thing to really do what's right, being the expert of that area, and connecting with customers. Now, in this goodbye, right when they leave, the one key thing that people miss is to either open your phone or go to a notebook, write down key notes about key things in the conversation that they brought up, whether it be their kids or college or whatever, and your promised action. Write that down right away. Otherwise, sometimes you can lose it. So do that right when they leave. Then, when it's time for you to leave, you're going to leave a thank you card for the seller, and you're going to call the seller, if it's your listing, or the seller's agent, and then update them about the traffic that came through and the main topics of conversations, questions, and concerns. That little follow-up piece with your seller, or if you're doing it for another agent, with the seller's agent, is really key. I mean, there's a lot of times that open houses happen and the seller's agent just doesn't hear anything. And that's kind of one of those things that it's hard for a seller's agent to have someone cover their open house. They hear nothing back, and then the seller wants to know, but then they have to keep following up with you. If you make it difficult, you're going to start finding yourself getting less opportunities to do open houses and less opportunities to build lists. And then just make sure you thank them for the opportunity, pick up all your materials, and in all caps here, turn off all the lights and lock all the doors. There are so many cases where people do open houses and someone left windows open, or they didn't check all the rooms and things got stolen, or they didn't lock all the doors or left the lights on and the sellers were out of town and all of a sudden they have a massive electric bill, and it's all because we forgot to turn the lights off. So we just need to stick with that. If you follow this process and do all this stuff here, even though sometimes it feels like maybe it's doing a little bit extra, you will have great success in your open houses, and this summer can be a massive launching point to setting up your future. Now, this is a lot, and you might be thinking, okay, like, how do I stay on track with this? Well, that's why we created the open house checklist. The open house checklist is a very simple way to keep yourself on track as you're going through the open house, checking off the boxes that you accomplished all the different steps that we talked about in this video. It's a very easy resource to use, and it includes a couple extra things about what to do after the open house, days after, or even more follow-up that might come from your success doing the open house. Now, this is available for all Focus First subscribers as one of our added resources. Under your Pricing and Resources tab, you'll see right here, on the bottom right, we have the Open House Checklist. If you click the Open Houses Checklist option here, you'll see there's a video walking through just basically the same thing we talked about in this video, walking through how to use the checklist, and a button here to download this. Hopefully this resource is a great tool for you to be able to use to get the most out of your open houses this summer, and use some of the graphs to really anchor your discussions to create new buyers, new sellers, and a better business.